future? Do you think that the direction you want to go in is the future?
Well, I think the future in the Republican Party is for us to defend liberty and for us to defend economic growth. I think principles of liberty and growth unify Republicans. They bring Republicans together, whether we are talking about the evangelical community or the liberty movement, whether you're talking about the business community, Main Street, or the Tea Party. I think if we focus on economic growth, on opportunity, and on liberty, that's how we unify the party, but that's also how we turn the country around. This administration, the Obama economic policies aren't working. The last 4 years, our economy has grown 0.9% a year, and people are hurting all over this country. We need to turn it around. We need to bring back jobs and economic growth. That's what I'm working to do every day.
Senator, they say nobody comes to Iowa by accident. Why are you here for the third time in 3 months after just having been elected senator?
Well, I was very glad to be invited by the Iowa Republican Party to speak at their Reagan Day dinner tonight. And I have been, in the time I've been in office, traveling all over the country, making the case to the grassroots. In the state of Texas, we've done over 75 events in the state of Texas, all over the state of Texas. And we've been to 13 states all over the country because I think the key to turning this country around is energizing and mobilizing the grassroots, is energizing and mobilizing the American people. A lot of what I talked about tonight was that there's a new paradigm in politics, the rise of the grassroots. The biggest disconnect, I think, is not between Republicans and Democrats. The biggest disconnect is between entrenched politicians in Washington and the American people. And I think the way to get back to the free market policies that works is for the American people to rise up, for the grassroots to rise up and hold every elected official accountable. And that's why I'm here in Iowa, to make the case on the ground to the people here and people all over the country that what we're doing isn't working. People are hurting. Obamacare is the biggest job killer in this country. And we need to get back to an environment where economic growth and jobs are flourishing, where everyone has a fair opportunity to achieve the American dream.
Senator, I'm Chris from Cedar Rapids. Our Congressman Dave Loebsack, Democrat out of Cedar Rapids, used your appearance here to try to raise money for his own campaign. Your thoughts on being a target even to try to raise money for the opposition?
Well, look, I understand that Democrats are very, very concerned when the American people are rising up. They're very, very concerned when over 2 million people signed the national petition at don'tfundit.com because Obamacare isn't working. They're very, very concerned because Democrats have stayed in power by implementing policies that aren't working. And so the last thing they want to discuss is the economic policies that have led to stagnant growth, have led to people struggling. That's what my focus is, and I wish the congressman all the best. But even more so, I wish that he would come together with Republicans, with independents, with libertarians, and embrace pro-growth policies that would get our economy moving again.
Senator, Governor Branstad said tonight that Republicans shouldn't violate the 11th commandment and criticize each other. Didn't you violate that commandment tonight, blaming some Senate Republicans for the failure of your effort on Obamacare?
I am a big believer that Republicans need to stand for principle. And I was elected to represent 26 million Texans, to fight for 26 million Texans for jobs and economic growth. Now, throughout my remarks tonight and throughout my tenure in Washington, I have been very careful not to speak ill of any senator, Republican or Democrat. That's very different from not being willing to speak the truth. And it is my job, my responsibility to 26 million Texans to speak the truth. And the truth is what we are doing right now, the Obama economic policies are not working. Because of Obamacare, young people are coming out of school all over this country not able to find jobs. Because of Obamacare, single moms are being forced into part-time work trying to feed their kids on 29 hours a week. Because of Obamacare, hardworking families are struggling to make ends meet and are getting insurance premiums that are skyrocketing that they can't afford. And because of Obamacare, hundreds of thousands of people all over this country are receiving notices right now that their health insurance is being canceled. It is the responsibility of every elected official, Republican or Democrat, to fight for the American people, to fight for economic growth and jobs, and to stop this out-of-control spending and taxes and regulations that is killing jobs and hurting those who are struggling to achieve the American dream.
Senator, I keep hearing you talk about Obamacare, and you're obviously keen to do something about it. But you haven't been using the phrase defund Obamacare. So how is your tactic change, or what is your goal going to be in the next budget round?
Todd, there will be plenty of time in the coming months to talk about specific tactics and strategies. What I think is critical is that we keep the focus on Obamacare. We keep the focus on the fact that this bill isn't working. You know, it's striking. A couple of weeks ago, in the midst of this battle, virtually the entire press said it was impossible that President Obama would ever delay Obamacare. It was impossible that the Democrats would ever agree to anything like that. And in the past week, we've seen the president and numerous Democrats coming out now saying, oh, we've got to delay this thing. So you will forgive me if I'm somewhat skeptical about the voices of wisdom in Washington who say it is impossible to stop this train wreck of a law that is hurting the American people. What I think is critical is that we keep the focus on bringing back jobs and economic growth. And the test for victory with regard to Obamacare is, are we providing meaningful relief for the millions of Americans who are hurting because of Obamacare, who are losing their jobs, who are losing their health care? That's the test. That's what our focus should be, and that certainly is where my focus is.
Sir, what's your alternative to Obamacare?
Let me answer it twofold. First of all, in the 10 months I've been in office, I've spent a great deal of time traveling the state of Texas, listening to Texans. Done over 75 events across the state of Texas, doing town halls, doing roundtables, listening to Texas. It doesn't matter where in Texas you are. You can be in East Texas, West Texas, you can be in the Panhandle or down in the Rio Grande Valley. The answer is consistently the same. When you ask Texans what's your top priority, the answer is jobs and economic growth, overwhelmingly. That is also the top priority of people all across this great country. Doesn't matter what region of the country, doesn't matter if you're talking to Republicans, Democrats, or independents. So my top priority in office is focused on one thing, restoring economic growth. Because if we can get an environment where historic growth is occurring again, where small businesses are prospering and thriving, what that enables is people who are struggling to climb the economic dream, to climb the economic ladder and achieve the American dream. So that, first of all, restoring economic growth, is my top priority, and Obamacare is the #1 job killer in the country. Now let me give a second answer to your question, which is part of your question was, what should we do about health care reform? Listen, I'm a passionate believer in health care reform. But I think health care reform should operate from principles that empower consumers and patients, expand competition, and disempower government bureaucrats from getting between us and our doctors. What does that mean specifically? 3 reforms. #1, allowing people to purchase insurance across state lines so we can create a true 50-state national marketplace. What that would do is it would dramatically expand the availability of low-cost, catastrophic policies. The biggest barrier to access is cost. Obamacare is driving the cost of coverage up, making access harder. We need to drive costs down, and a 50-state national marketplace would do that. Secondly, we should expand health savings accounts so people can save in a tax-advantaged way to meet routine health care prevention and needs. And third, we need to work to delink health insurance from employment. It's an historical accident that it's connected to employment, and right now, if you or I lose our jobs, you don't lose your car insurance, you don't lose your house insurance, you don't lose your life insurance. There's no reason on earth you should lose your health insurance, and of all of them, it's the worst one to lose, because that's where much of the problem with pre-existing conditions comes in, when someone loses their job and then can't get health insurance. Now, I would note, all 3 of those specific reforms derive from fundamentally different principles than Obamacare. They're about empowering you, the patient, rather than Obamacare's approach, which is empowering government bureaucrats to get between you and your doctor.
Senator Cruz, one more. What's your reaction to a group of Democratic senators who sent a letter to Secretary Sebelius asking for an extension in the enrollment period?
Well, look, I'm not surprised that Democrats are admitting Obamacare isn't working. It is impossible, looking at the facts, to come to any conclusion other than that. But, you know, I think it is unfortunate that their response to all of the people who are losing their jobs, who are forced into part-time work, who are losing their health insurance because of skyrocketing insurance premiums and because health insurance companies are canceling their policies because of Obamacare, I think it's unfortunate that the Democrats' response is not to provide any relief to those millions of Americans who are hurting, but instead simply to suggest, let's expand the enrollment period. They're not listening to the American people. And the most fundamental thing this fight was about in Washington, it was broader than Obamacare, it was broader than the budget. It was fundamentally about making D.C. listen to the American people. It's why the hashtag Make DC Listen has been tweeted over 1 million times in the last 30 days. Because that's the issue. And you look at the response that you just cited from Democrats. They are saying to all the people who are losing their health insurance, we have no answer for you. They are saying, you know, some of y'all watching this, you may not believe what I'm saying because I'm a politician. And that's actually a pretty good instinct. I agree with that instinct. And others of you may not believe me because I'm a Republican politician. But if you don't believe me because of that, perhaps you would believe James Hoffa, who is the president of the Teamsters, who's a liberal Democrat who campaigned and supported President Obama, Harry Reid, and Nancy Pelosi, who just a couple of months ago wrote in a letter to Harry Reid and Nancy Pelosi that Obamacare is destroying the 40-hour work week that is the backbone of the American middle class, and that it is destroying the health care of millions of working men and women and the families who depend on them. Now, Mr. Hoffa used that word, destroying. And I would suggest, my friends in the Senate who are Democrats, if they listened to their constituents, if they listened to Mr. Hoffa, they would be concerned about what he described as millions of working men and women whose health care is being destroyed right now. We ought to be listening to the people. That ought to be true, Republican and Democrat. We ought to come together and say, let's provide real relief for the millions of people who are struggling, who are losing their jobs and losing their health care because of Obamacare. We need economic growth again. We need everyone to have a fair opportunity to achieve the American dream. Thank you very much, everyone.